In working on a piece, I always ask myself, what is so distinct about this piece? In working on Beethoven's Sonata, I found abundance of distinct features. Let me illustrate it this way. Each dot here represents one distinct feature that I have discovered. The discovery of the distinct features is just the first step in my learning process. Next, I must connect some, and eventually all together to understand what is conveyed by the music here. Then, from understanding, I start to get the insights or meaning, or the message the composer tried to communicate. Here, some of the features start to shine a light in my mind and soul. This is the exciting aha moment. Some features still need further explorations and digging into its meaning of existence, not yet shining or perhaps just dimly shining. Eventually, the whole thing makes one integrated meaning after some time of intense personal explorations. At this level, I will feel I meet face to face with the composer, and there is no terminal moment. This big light will continue to grow in size and its intensity as long as I continue to explore within the music. This is the main reasons why I force myself to study each piece that I present in my lecture series. I try to meet the composer through his or her compositions. This is why I title my lecture series as The Analytical Interpretations, Insights and Inspirations. The goal of my presentation is to share some examples of Beethoven musical language in this Sonata. Please allow me to bring back an earlier sonata of Beethoven that was composed around the same period of time. That is the Opus 53, published only 2 years earlier, the famous Waldstein. By comparing the two, we may see even clearer what is so distinct in this Sonata, the message from the depth of the composer's soul and mind. Number 21, Waldstein, Opus 53, published in 1805, is a work of high spirit. It is an expression of Beethoven's idealisms. Beethoven was a man who was full of noble thoughts and was so eager to change his world through music. Number 23, Sonata, Opus 57, published in 1807. On the other hand, Sonata is an expression of Beethoven's personal despair, how far the reality was from his wish. Beethoven was striving for equality for all mankind, but he himself felt as the victim of the social injustice. His immortal beloved, or his distant beloved, was in a perfect, beautiful union only in his song. The truth was, Beethoven felt rejected due to his social class and unstable financial condition. Here we may learn that harmonic progressions may express specifically different moods. In Waldstein, we have whole step-down progressions from C major to B flat major, and in Sonata, we have a half step-up progression from F minor to G flat major. The two harmonic progressions express different conditions of the souls and mind of the composers. These downward chord progressions to a distant key expresses the freedom, the roaming free open space, breath of relief, fresh air, great adventures of life. Here I pick a picture to illustrate the feeling conveyed by such harmonic progressions. Imagine you are running free down this road of a spectacular view and having nothing to care. Now, what a half-step harmonic progression expresses. To me, it is like looking to the sky, since it is now on a higher level. Wishful, praying, reflecting, and being optimistic, seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Both B-flat major and the G-flat majors are distant modulations, but these two harmonic progressions communicate different moods. Still comparing Waldstein and Sonata. Now let us focus on other musical elements as tools of communication. First, at the different texture, fully harmonized in Waldstein. This tells me the kind of spirit the composer is expressing, strong, solid determinations, even rather obsessed and on the pursuit. In addition to this, if we look at the directions of the lines, it is constructed of repeated notes. This amplifies the message communicated already by the harmonic progressions and the texture. Contrary to that is the one we find in Sonata. It is without the harmony filler, hollow, two-octave unison. This communicates to me the uncertainty, not grounded. Then the directions of the line shortly downward, then goes the opposite way with more active rhythm, as if fleeting, running away, escaping gesture. Or it may communicate rising up a question, most likely an unanswered question. I can emphasize further the difference between the two by placing an exclamation mark and a question mark. There are so many elements that communicate to us than just the simple major or minor key. Harmonic progressions, texture, different directions of the lines, and lastly for now, rhythm. Music is truly a language, but just like any other language, we need to get familiar with its vocabulary. Here in Waldstein, the rhythm is persistent, chasing the sure target in front. But in Sonata, we have one long note before it continues fleeing upward. Rhythmic-wise, it is a sharpened march rhythm, or the dotted rhythm. It does communicate the readiness and the unreadiness at the same time, the agony and the irony, the delirium state of being. One more comparison to another sonata of Beethoven. This one is from his very first published piano sonata, which happens to be also in the same key, F minor. Now the comparison is not between major to minor key settings. Here we have two minor keys, and even not all pieces in minor key are the same. Absolutely not. We have the double line in Sonata, but single line in the Opus 2. How do we translate this? In the double line of the Sonata, definitely one could sense the heaviness, the burdensome, or it may communicate the shadow that keeps following, a threat and a mystery in pianissimo. Dynamic markings are also tools in musical language. Also the march rhythm, or perhaps here the funeral march rhythm, adds the heaviness and the mystery. The single line in Opus 2 is like carefree run, carrying no burden. That is the soul of young Beethoven. Rebellious, straight line upward and straight rhythm in a single line. Yes, lonely single line, but fearless. And see the staccato. It communicates a message as well, ready to fight or bite anyone. One way to translate that. Now, after learning a little bit of the musical language, let us take a look at one distinct feature in this sonata. I will not discuss the knocking motif since you may find many lectures on that short long motif. But here I will bring up the overwhelming hemiola. How Beethoven uses that and differentiates that from the non-hemiola. After the dotted rhythm opening, here the same theme appears in a massive fortissimo passage, full chords, and in a hemiola fashion. Two against three or the other way around. You can see in the excerpts here, the red and purple chords are alternating because of the triple quavers that fill the crotchet pulses. One tool of musical language like this hemiola may function differently in a different setting. That is the amazing wealth in music. In the excerpts on the top, it communicates the uneasiness, adding to the heaviness of the massive sound of the chords. But in the excerpt at the bottom, it communicates differently. It is down below, rumbling beneath, perhaps not the heaviness of a burden, but more of the depth of Beethoven's determinations. With a beautiful singing melody above and using the same theme, this hemiola also produces a lilting gesture, a dancing soul embracing courageously his unfair destiny. Here we find a single line texture, the loneliness in the hemiola constructions, a long fall to the abyss, alone. The hemiola accompaniment that gives the dancing feeling still dances, but more like a mockery here at the coda. And becomes the pounding massive chords. And to heighten the conflict, Beethoven also added the syncopated sforzandi, restless, burdensome, bearing mockery, injustice, full of anger. But then, strangely, those pounding rage vanishes. For the last feature, I would like to compare the endings of the first movement and the last movement. After the funeral march opening of the first movement, the sonata ends with a decisive march, like a war march. The first two massive chords to me feels like stomping, bravely moving forward, entering the raging war, especially when it turns to its relative majors. Here we find in this coda the repeated note constructions, like in Waldstein I mentioned earlier, the strong determinations. Also, I imagine the sound of beating drums, many drums and big drums, nearby and in the distance. Then unleashing the inferno in a whirlwind, running notes mark resto in this coda. Again, Beethoven is so fond of the syncopated sforzandi, and what a tragic end, all crumbles down to nothing. There are so many distinct features in this sonata other than the examples presented here in this lecture. To name a few, the Destiny motif, the knocking short long motif that shares its rhythmic pattern to Beethoven's famous Symphony No. 5, or the flattened second chord, so-called the Neapolitan 6th chord, that comes and goes throughout the first and the last movement. This Appassionata is an expression of an outcast anguish. Because of his social status as a common man, Beethoven was unable to love a woman of the aristocratic status. Also, as an independent musician, Beethoven did not have a steady salary, unlike those in other types of occupations. And there are just to name a few of Beethoven's many struggles. This sonata was dedicated to Franz Brunswick, the older brother of the two sisters Josephine and Teresa. One of these sisters was Beethoven's immortal beloved. This is as if Beethoven was expressing his despair to the brother Franz. About 4 years of no piano sonata after this, and strangely, his next one was dedicated to one of the sisters, Teresa, the Opus 78, that is in a totally different mood, reconciled and playful. Finding distinct features is just the beginning of discovering the message that the composer wants to deliver. This is the analytical interpretations, and here is mine, as I try to connect these features with historical facts around the time of the compositions of this sonata. Remember these dots? Each dot is a discovery. Until finally, I feel like conversing in a musical language with these phenomenal composers, phenomenal mind and phenomenal soul.